sending it out after the session, so you could be fully present here. For today, we will be focused on one, how to build a personal brand using LinkedIn, and number two, how to keep going with your personal brand. I know half of the battle is just starting. So for tonight, we will not be talking about how to find a job on LinkedIn or how to network on LinkedIn. That will actually be a session tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, I'll drop that link in the chat later. And lastly, the majority of this session will be your questions. So if you have any, please drop them in the chat. I'll be monitoring them for the audience Q&A, and I'll call on folks if you feel brave enough to speak up. All right, let's hop into the questions, y'all. For now, we've collected some questions that we thought were interesting from, or common themes from the registration, so we'll go through those first. I'm personally curious to know how investing in building your personal brand on LinkedIn has changed your career for the better. So I would love for you guys to share one or two specific examples. Here's how and why.
I'm happy to kick us off. I have been using LinkedIn for years now. I started my profile in college, and it has truly been the number one tool, platform, just kind of accelerator and catalyst for the work that I do and building community, right? Meeting people who want to work with me, who I want to work with in return, and just finding those opportunities one after another. That all kind of started with sharing first generation experiences. I'm a first generation low income student. And so being able to talk about something that I didn't necessarily quite understand best about myself entering college and then learning from fellow professionals or folks in my field that, hey, other people go through this too. Other people don't necessarily have that social capital either, or like have to build this certain type of resilience or college experience that's not like maybe the standard or normal was such a pivotal moment for my career. And that really led to me wanting to share more on LinkedIn and building out a really robust profile and place for folks to, when they find me, learn a lot about me, even if they haven't really met me yet. Um, I have a very soft spot for LinkedIn. I'm a top voice on the platform. I really love sharing ideas and thoughts there. And it can be a really great place to kind of explore how you articulate your brand, how you communicate professionally, how you want to be showing up in the world of work in more of that professional setting in a way that's quite different from many other social media platforms. So I love LinkedIn. I could share all of those praises this whole time. But investing in my brand there has been a game changer for me. And there are many ways to dive into that, which I know we'll address.
Yeah,
Can I? Sorry.
oh, yeah, I'll go ahead and answer, and then we have questions coming up at the end, Sandra. I don't know how you want to do questions, if you want to do them throughout or save it for the end of our part.
I'm
What would
not
you
one of
prefer?
the forward guest speakers, but I wanted to share as if I was one. Could I, if I, yeah, so I would use LinkedIn when I was in college more. And then I started, there's a book by Brenda something, How to Make a Killer LinkedIn Profile. That was, I used that and I have it. And then I started going to events and then taking each person's LinkedIn, right? And then I started using a tool called Phantom Buster, right? If anyone, I use that. And then I started to do like lists from companies or like taking those and then adding them to myself. Then I like used a server like a VPN, and then I connected to like one in Germany. And then one time I woke up and someone changed my headline, my photo, and my name even. Then I started going by an alias. Like I don't use my no real name anymore. I don't use my personal email anymore, my personal phone number. I use like a prepaid SIM number. And then I made business cards. And then there was like a
Hey
lapse
Faisal,
now.
how do I pronounce your name? Let me just pause you quickly.
Faisal. There's multiple
Faisal?
pronunciations. It's like
Okay.
one of those names that's like worldwide common. So
Yeah.
there's like multiple pronunciations of my name.
Oh, I
Like
love that.
certain.
Well, I just wanted to reserve this space to first let Mariam and Ange speak, and then once we go into the Q&A section, I definitely would love to hear more about your
Oh,
story. So does that sound good?
sure. However,
Okay.
it's just I've been doing like experimenting with LinkedIn, so I enjoyed so doing that, and that's how I've been like learning. Uh, even to like make a role for myself so then I can be seen by recruiters, and then learning about like what are the job descriptions of that role, even if I didn't have that role, and then making projects. That's what I'm doing now. I'm playing with it. So,
Okay, great.
all right,
Well,
yeah,
thank you
yeah,
for
I'll
that
let you. Yeah, of
context.
course, cool, of course, understood.
Awesome. Mara, I'll let you
No,
take it
thank
away.
you. There's there's a lot of ways to use LinkedIn, and there's a lot of outside of for today, what we're going to talk about is really about the networking piece, and not even just the networking piece, but building our own brand. So I'll kind of jump on what Ange had shared. So on my end professionally, so if you don't know the background and sort of what I do, I've been working with early career talent, so mostly college students or people fresh out of school, or people who are transitioning into a new role for the last several years. And so a big part of what I've spent the last few years thinking about is like, who is my audience and where can I provide value? And particularly for my work, a lot of what we do is very Texas focused and very Austin based. So I made a choice to be like, okay, when I'm talking about not just like career development stuff, but I want to also really focus on the work that I'm doing to build local community in Austin, because those are the kinds of folks I also want to attract professionally. And it's led to a lot of really cool opportunities and a lot of really cool people reaching out to me. For example, like someone reached out 2 weeks ago being like, hey, I have this idea for an AI career coach bot thing, and I've seen what you're posting, and I'd love to like get your input on it, which was like a very cool thing. And it was someone based in Austin who, again, cares about similar things. The other thing that I found is if you are doing a lot of outreach for whether it's your job searching or for your, you're in a sales role, stuff like that, the more you post on LinkedIn, because there is so much of this like cold DMing that happens on LinkedIn that sometimes people are like, I don't know if I want to respond to another one. But when people have taken the time to check my LinkedIn and see what I like to talk about, they're much more likely to respond and see that, oh, I have a sense of who this person is and what they're excited about, what their values are, and I can see that alignment there. So I would say that that's the other reason investing in particularly like LinkedIn has been super helpful for me. And then the other thing I'll sort of throw out there is outside of LinkedIn, I've also invested a lot in email newsletters because that's also a form in which I enjoy talking and sharing. So we're going to talk about LinkedIn mostly today, but also naming that if LinkedIn isn't your vibe, a lot of this advice applies if you like TikTok or if you want to do an email newsletter or Substack or whatever it is. But yeah, that's sort of been my experience.
I love that there's different venues that you can go about this. And then with LinkedIn, I know there's a bunch of people who have started creating. The creator economy on LinkedIn is alive and well. Sometimes there is a lot of noise out there. I get pretty overwhelmed. I don't really know who I can trust. So, as two people who share research backed and authentic career advice, how do you curate your feed and community on LinkedIn?
This is a hard one, right? There is a lot of noise out there. And LinkedIn used to have a hashtags feature that was pretty prominent, and you could follow hashtags in the past. I attribute that to so much of the things that I'm seeing today and kind of how I was able to really find the niches and the content areas and the specific things in the world of work that I cared about. I could access them more pointedly, and that's not as true today. So I'm really glad we're talking about that. There's more manual searching that needs to take place. And I personally think about my community on LinkedIn and my connections in a couple ways, right? I think about the people I truly know, right? Like colleagues, peers in my classes, people I've met in real life, other creators that I've gotten to know, people on coffee chats, those people, and then also kind of the just creator companions, right? Or thought leader, thought enhancer companions. So folks I may not have necessarily met yet, but maybe we follow each other or I follow them because I really like the things that they do. And so I try to make sure that those communities are kind of speaking together in harmony, right? Like I'm getting what I need from my true professional connections. And then I'm also seeing via the way that folks I don't know as well are actively personal branding and putting out there, right? And so I've been in situations where I do connect with someone or I do follow someone, and then maybe a month or so later, a couple months down the road, I go, I don't think I'm as interested in their content anymore. And I think that that's okay. You can engage with people, you can engage with them less. You can turn on notifications for certain people if you find someone you really want to keep seeing in your feed and you want their content to surface for you. that's a tool I highly recommend you take advantage of. But it's also totally okay to know that your feed will change, to know that the more you engage with certain types of content in certain niches, LinkedIn's going to reward your feed in that way. And so, sometimes I hear, especially with, other areas of career development, oh, well, and, this isn't quite as tailored for me as I want it to. Like, this search feature isn't super helpful. Well, are you putting in the effort and are you building out your profile and are you engaging in a way that's going to tell the platform, hey, these are the things that I really like. These are the things that I'm interested in. And so I do think it takes maintenance. And I think it's okay to, maybe engage with someone for a little bit, learn a little bit more about them, and then maybe stop engaging so much and find other avenues. And with LinkedIn in particular, relying on that second degree connection, right? Your network's network. Who are they interacting with? Who are they engaging with? Who can your good mentor introduce you to? Ask those people that. That's how I build a trusted community and kind of try to tamper some of the noise that can happen with lots and lots of different people.
Yeah, I will say I have not been as strategic as Ange has been, and I definitely like have hit a point sometimes where I notice my feed is like wild, particularly because like for so many years I was very like nonprofit social impact focused, and now I'm like I had to really make an effort to shift my feed to be much more like hiring, recruiting, job seeker focused. And so part of it, yeah, was just like finding the people like Ange who talk about things that are of interest to me, following them, seeing who they comment on, because one of the good things about folks who are really engaged on LinkedIn is that they also comment on other people who talk about similar things. So it's actually been pretty easy in that sense to introduce new topics, but I still have like quite a bit of like relevant stuff that pops up every now and then. So this was a good reminder that like it's okay to curate a little bit. And then in the flip direction, one of the things that I've found is like with social media in general, and I think this actually applies to LinkedIn too, particularly as more like Gen Z and like younger folks enter like this arena, people we know, they respond to authenticity, right? Like they can tell when someone is like making something up or they don't really like buy what they're selling, like that kind of thing. I think people have gotten very good at realizing that. That's why I think there's a lot of memes about LinkedIn content being made fun of. Sometimes it's like, my wife left me this week. Here's what it taught me about like corporate mergers, like things like that, right? That's a joke that comes up a lot. And I think we're actually seeing less of that. And I think that folks who are younger on LinkedIn have an opportunity to show up more professionally, but also authentically on the space. And so what I've tried to do is like, again, be really laser focused on who is my audience, who am I trying to reach, both like personally and professionally, and talking about that stuff. And it's organically brought in people who are more likely to follow me because they are looking for that content too. So I think it's been a good system. I think again, like I can definitely do a better job of curating my feed, but I think it has brought in, it's like attracted followers that I would want because I've used my authentic voice and I've been really, really diligent about the topics that I choose to speak on. So that's what I would also throw out there.
I love that. There's that quote where it's like you are the combination of the five closest people around you. I don't know if LinkedIn is as prevalent because it's more of a looser touch, but I'm curious to know who are 2 to 3 creators on LinkedIn that you recommend or you really like following.
This was so hard to only narrow down to 2 or 3 because that's the beauty of LinkedIn is about, I think less than 1% of global users post on the platform and share. So this number is already like tight, but the ones who are active and the ones who are sharing a lot are like amazing. So this was really hard to narrow down to just a few, but one of my favorites, and I'm going to try to drop all these folks in the chat as I talk. My good friend and person I've met in the past, Jade Walters. I bet there are folks on this call who know who Jade is. She's been really consistently and actively posting and contributing via her blog, The Ninth Semester. She's just an early career champion. And so I turn anybody who's Gen Z, early career, on the job search, looking for internships, I turn anybody in that scenario to her. She's just fantastic. And she's such a true, as Mariam said, authentic voice. And that's so, so important on a platform that can get crowded with less authenticity and more salesy pitches kind of in our feed. Um, Another person that I really admire and really enjoy is Travis Chen. He's a fellow LinkedIn top voice, and he just shares incredible insights about the creator economy, corporate America, first generation immigrant experiences. He's just absolutely fantastic. And so I can never go a moment recommending folks without throwing his name in there. And then another person is Leah Vernon. She has been recently rising to the ranks of my feed. She's been popping up and popping off everywhere. I absolutely adore her content. She's another example of just a prime, authentic voice that's really channeled at disrupting whiteness and centering these archaic historical practices that have historically, undermined Black women, have misrepresented people of color in the world of work, and have prohibited that success and growth and exposure that we all deserve, of course, in the world of work. And so she is amazing. Here is her link as well. Her posts are funny, they're engaging, they're gripping, they make you think, they make you self-reflect, and I love that kind of content. Um, Again, this was so hard to name a few, but these are a couple folks who I've been absolutely loving, have loved in the past, and am learning to really enjoy in my feed.
Yeah, Ange like fully stole two of the people that I would have named. So then I was trying to think outside of the box. So my two that I would throw out, one is if you're looking for reliable advice on like navigating applications, Bonnie Dilber is like the head of recruiting at Zapier. Oh, I just sent it in a DM. Here we go. Bonnie is great. I've spoken with her personally. She's like so knowledgeable, but the thing that I appreciate about her is she is very accessible. I think sometimes we like think about recruiters as being really intimidating and they're sort of like the other side or the enemy. Like, I don't know how to, talk to a recruiter. And she is doing such a good job of like really centering on the candidate experience and giving like accurate information and advice on how to navigate your job applications, particularly in a tough market. And this is like actually her job. So that's also super helpful. She knows what she's talking about. And then the other one's a little bit of a twist. She's not like a big name influencer. She's a former student of mine named Juliet Richard. And I drop her name as an example of someone who is starting to build their brand. So if you are somebody who's on this call, like, I want to get started, I don't know how to get started, I'm not sure like what I should be doing. Juliet is a great person just for inspiration. She's Austin based. She's really passionate about like the VC space and female founders. And so she has a really good discipline of multiple times a week sharing her own insights, sharing events that she does in Austin. She tags other people that she gets to work with. She's done a really good job of being super on top of it. So if you're looking for somebody who's maybe like closer to where you currently are and you're looking for some like models, she's a really good person just to check out how she's going about it. It might give you some inspiration. So those are the two that I would throw out there as well.
Wow, it's a gold mine of resources. I think a main theme that I'm hearing is just authenticity, and I have to address AI in the room. Do you guys use AI for your content creation? How do you use it to stand out if you do?
I have enough tabs open in my brain at any given time. So whenever there's a moment for me to ask another source to spur an idea or help me untangle something that I'm thinking about, AI is my buddy. I do not use it to write my content, however. It is not what is being put on LinkedIn, that's for sure. And I think sometimes folks really fail to realize who are using AI for content creation or sharing on LinkedIn. People notice, people can tell. There is an easy tell when there's lack of authenticity in your voice. There's lack of certain like structures or colloquialisms or just flow in writing that is, I think, easy to detect. And even if it's maybe not fully AI generated, people don't love when things sound salesy. They really don't appreciate that. It's not as authentic or storytelling oriented or narrative based. And LinkedIn does reward paragraph style content on their platform. That's a thing that people really do enjoy and gravitate to LinkedIn for over a lot of other social medias because it is primarily written content at this point in time. And so, all that to say, AI is an incredible buddy. It's an incredible helper for just kind of like extrapolating ideas, or sometimes I'll ask it, like, could you reframe this from, let's say, like the other perspective? So I could maybe understand what someone might think if they don't agree with me or had a different angle to approach this. Or sometimes I'll ask it like, I am early in my career. Do you know what this might look like for someone who's mid-career or senior or C-suite, just so I can better have a grasp on the things that I'm sharing and how they might apply or not to others in my audience in the room. So it's a great acquaintance in the content journey, in the personal branding journey, but it is not the author, it's not the writer. It is a tad tidbit support. And yeah, people do recognize when it's prominent in content. And I think that that's really something that a lot of creators and anybody trying to kind of crank out content should look out for and maybe rethink part of that process.
Yeah, I totally agree. I used AI today for not, I guess, kind of for tangentially for content creation, but what I had done was like, I was like, I know I have this idea in my head, but I'm like having writer's block and I need someone to articulate this like concept. And then I was like, oh, this is what I'm trying to say. And then I wrote it out myself. But even stuff like that, it's so helpful, as Ange said. Like sometimes when you're staring at like the blank slate, it's really hard to get started. So AI is a good prompting tool if you use it properly, but exactly as Ange said, like we can tell when we're reading AI, and people are gonna get better at detecting that too. And I think it's just something to really keep in mind. So yeah, that's how I use AI as well. But yeah.
Thank you for those insights. So before we head into the audience Q&A, I want to make sure we have enough time for that. Let's leave job seekers, early career professionals with some actionable tips and takeaways. I know we've been talking at them a lot. So my first question for you is, what are 1 to 3 things people can do now to get started with personal branding on LinkedIn?
I would just love to start out these tips and advice, kind of pieces from us by saying personal branding is 100% in your control. And your personal brand is what people begin to know and refer to you by. That's what everybody's seeing. So, what you have people seeing, how you have people perceiving you, is 100% in your control. Just remember that. I think we think of personal brand as like, oh my gosh, being 100% perfect or making this, grand effort to share a bunch of ideas and just showing up as like 110% all the time. It is not that. It is the active effort that you put in to share a semester in review recap, to update your resume, to reach out to that person in an intentional way, to just start building your reputation as a consultant, as a social services worker, as a practitioner, as a scholar, whatever that thing is, however you want to be known by. It's just that active process of putting in the time and putting in the intention. And I sometimes forget that. I'm like, Ange, you're in the driver's seat. You have the potential here and you have the capacity to make it what you want to make it. You can say yes, you can say no, you can redirect. So I just want to put that out there. When it comes to LinkedIn in particular, this is something you probably heard before, but quality over quantity, always. I would much rather, especially if I'm having a week where maybe I don't have as much content as I want, I would rather put out 2 or 3 really high quality posts or things that I'm sharing than 5 to 6 kind of mismatched, jumbled, maybe rehashes of something I've shared in the last couple of months. Would way rather have that quality out there. Taking advantage of those profile sections that LinkedIn has is incredible and a must. That featured section, I think, is one of the best things that LinkedIn has put out in recent years. They've gotten rid of some features, but they added in featured as a part of your profile. Take advantage of that. Put evidence of what you do and what you can bring to the table in that section, right? Share an example of your work. And I know it's easy to be hesitant about posting, second guessing what that could mean. How do I write professionally? Will people want to even see this? Just share it. I can guarantee you're going to be blown away by how your community responds and supports you in that process. And you help empower somebody else to get sharing and get posting too. Those are my 3 tips, 3 takeaways, and just always remember you are in control of how your personal brand evolves.
Yeah, I underline all of the things that Ange just said. I think one of the things that I did, as I've said a few times, is like when I decided I wanted to be more diligent about posting, I first like sat with myself to understand what is my goal? Like, why am I wanting to post? Who is my target audience? Like, what is my focus right now? Like, what does success look like for me? And so for some of y'all, your reason for posting might be that you're like, I'm looking for a job. I'm trying to like make sure that I get in front of more recruiters, get in front of like companies that I'm interested in. Maybe that you're trying to explore a new industry and you're like, I'd love to find more mentors, or I'd like to build my profile in this industry I'm trying to break into. You could like want to build like a particular like shtick, like you're like, I want to be known as the person who gives great advice on this, like whatever your subject, you know, wherever you want to take it, right? That is like entirely up to you, but it's worth thinking about that first. That was really important for me as a first step. And then paired with that is, of course, like, who is my target audience? And then the next thing that I did was figure out like where my impact could be. Like, what can I bring in a really crowded market? Like, what is the perspective that is unique to me? What is something that I think is going to be valuable and helpful? Something that I found, because I work with so many job seekers, is they are looking for like really specific, like tactical advice, right? Like the reason we do these workshops is like, we want people to be able to walk away and say like, okay, I have a next step that I can take. And so I wanted that to come across in my content. So that was the second thing I thought deeply about. It's like, okay, when I'm trying to figure out the kind of things that I want to post, like, let me ground it in a couple of like things that are important to me as I'm building my brand. And that was one of the things that I thought about. So I think that starting there and having like a clear direction of why you're doing it is really helpful. Otherwise, it's going to just, you're going to get in your head. You're going to be like, what do I post today? Like, you're going to get really overwhelmed. So have a little bit of a personal strategy, and it can always evolve. Like I said, for me, my career has kind of shifted direction slightly. And I shifted my content strategy slightly. So, you know, it kind of goes that way. So those are some things I would add on to what Anne shared.
Awesome. Thanks for those tips. What would be 1 to 3 things you would do to keep on going, and try to be as specific as possible?
We hear it a lot, but it is the truth, and that's that consistency does lead to results. By continuing to share and by continuing to put my ideas out there, it was slow to grow at first, absolutely. But I now can confidently rely on maybe 3 to 5 DMs a month that are asking about a partnership or a presentation or workshop or an opportunity to come speak to their team or their group or whatever it may be. And I'm great with that. That's perfect for me. That's exactly where I want to be. I'm not, relying on as much like outbound marketing or more pitching myself. I do that every now and again if there's someone I really want to work with, connect with, have a relationship with. But showing up often, being a trusted source, being reliable, being authentic, friendly, kind, building that community has paid dividends. And that's the consistency piece. If I don't show up on LinkedIn, people aren't going to show up back, right? People aren't going to find me. I'm not going to get as many followers or as much engagement or as much activity. And I want those things. I want to keep maintaining those things. And so consistency is truly key, and sharing as often as I can, kind of within LinkedIn's algorithm and just in line with my personal schedule and the things that I want to be putting out there, has been the biggest game changer. And I know that posting content or creating isn't necessarily for everyone, but I encourage anybody on LinkedIn to share periodically, to just put something out there. Show that you are learning, show that you are achieving, show that you are doing whatever it may be, whatever it looks like. Just share something.
Yeah, tactically, what I have found to be really helpful, because consistency is hard for me. I'm gonna like be very transparent about that right now. I feel like it's really hard to keep up, right? Or you'll have a day where you're like, I just don't want to post today. So what I've done is I try once a week to block like an hour, 2 hours, where I'm like, let me think about the content I want to post next week. And I like pre-write it, pre-record it, because I do like videos and stuff as well, for some of the content. And I pair that with the written content. And I just like knock it all out. And then LinkedIn makes it super easy to like schedule it for the week ahead and let it do its thing. So that like the weeks that I'm good about that, I see the difference with my engagement. I see the difference with my followers, all of that. So like, again, good reminder for me to keep doing that. And then the other piece, as we sort of touched on, is engaging with other people's content. That's important for your own feed, but also for your name to pop up on other people's feeds. So if you like block 30 minutes a day, even just to start, and just go through your feed, like stuff, comment stuff. It doesn't have to be anything like super profound, but just like, I can tell, like, there are a lot of names that I recognize because they comment a lot and I see their names pop up over and over. So even if I haven't engaged with them like super directly, I recognize them because, as Ange said, there's such a small percent of people who are engaging on LinkedIn that it's actually really easy to be memorable. So that's something else I would definitely call out.
Thank you for all those takeaways. Hopefully it's helpful for the people in the audience. I would love to pivot and let's open it now to audience Q&A. I have a question in the chat that I will read aloud, and if you have other questions, please click on the raise your hand and I'll call on you to answer next. So this question is from Faisal. How do you deal with negativity from others when you're trying to create your own LinkedIn presence? What have been your experiences and how did you overcome it?
Happy to start that one off. I've definitely had folks not love what I share or what I do. I've had negative comments. I've had people push back. I've had nasty DMs. It happens to everybody. I always remind myself and ground myself in the value that I do share and the positive feedback that I do get. And I do read all commentary and all feedback. I do. Like, I read the YouTube comments. Like, I am reading what's going on and what people are saying because I want to maintain my brand as an authentic, trustworthy, positive voice in my space. If there's something that I did that is wrong or something that I should not have done whatsoever, I want to own up to that. I need to apologize, all of those things. But just generic negativity or people kind of hating for no reason or in a way that's not very constructive or helpful for a dialogue, I tune it out. I truly do. I might kind of stir over it for a little bit. I might get kind of annoyed or aggravated, but I try to move on and I try to seek out conversations with people who I know can help me engage in a dialogue about that thing. So, like, can I call a friend? Can I talk to my partner about it? Could I, have a one on one with someone who is a mentor, someone that I'm close with, and like, let's chat about it. Let me be able to talk about it in a way that is productive and can be conducive to maybe some new content that I can share or a learning experience. Negativity is common, and it's often something that, like, I think we as creators or people who are building, like Mariam, like anybody who's a founder, can feel a lot and put a lot of that pressure on ourselves. And so that's even the negativity that I'm more interested in trying to combat and trying to remind myself of the value that I bring, what I'm doing consistently, how I'm showing up. I need to treat myself well too. So there's that negative kind of commentary that can come from being online, and that's to be expected no matter who you are or if you're the most perfect person in the world. And there's also that kind of self-criticism and doubt that can come too. And I'm way more interested in taking care of Ange to make sure that that does not override anything that I'm putting out there. But it is tough, and I totally feel for folks in that situation.
Yeah, there's only like maybe two thoughts I'd sort of add on top of that. One is I just want to underscore this. I like don't react right away. Like, and this, I've had this experience more with honestly emails than like people commenting on social media, but like when I get those emails or I get those comments or whatever, that I'm like, oh, I like don't let myself reply or engage with it like for a little while because I need to be able to react emotionally and like, yeah, maybe vent about it, maybe like feel like sad or like freaked out about it, whatever. And then I will decide how and if I want to engage and like what is the appropriate response. And that's going to vary depending on the situation. And then the second thing that like this question makes me think about is fear, right? I think like tactically for me, right? Because my job is that I talk to both job seekers and recruiters. And often recruiters and job seekers are, at least on LinkedIn, at odds with each other. I don't think that's the reality. But you probably noticed if you're on like my corner of LinkedIn or TikTok that it's like recruiters being like job seekers, like don't show up to interviews and they haven't even read the job description and like no one wants to work. And like you hear that dialogue. And then on the job seeker side, it's a lot of I've been ghosted. Nobody cares about my experience. Like it sucks out here. And I'm sort of sitting in between. So sometimes I have a lot of fear of like leaning too hard on one side or the other because I don't want to offend the other side that I'm trying to represent too. So this is something that I have to think about all the time where I'm like, I don't want to like piss anyone off. I want to like bring nuance. And one of the things that I do appreciate about LinkedIn compared to like TikTok or other different platforms that reward short version content, like TikTok wants the 30-second videos. They reward you for the 30-second videos that people watch 10 seconds of. If you've seen my TikToks, they are not 30 seconds because I can't keep it to 30 seconds. Like I just can't. And so part of what I appreciate about LinkedIn though, is that there's room for nuance because as Ange said, you can go and do like paragraphs. Like they do actually like that. So something that I appreciate when it comes to like trying to avoid making sweeping statements that might piss someone off is like LinkedIn's actually a great space to acknowledge all the sides of the discussion. So that's just something that came to mind that I appreciate about LinkedIn over other forms of social media. So that's just me.
Oh, thank you both for your responses. I learned a lot. I would have that a lot when I did posts, right? And then people would say, "Oh, this is silly. Why would you do this?" Or, and then I grounded myself in that like I had an intention when I made the post, and that even though someone would say it's negative, because right away when I would make something, those are the people who come first, and then later on I would realize that people would gravitate towards it, and then the value I thought it would create, like the intention, the vision I had, the thinking I had, then it would do that. Like someone would say, "Oh, I appreciate your post that said about how to prepare for an interview," and like someone will like it, some student, right? And it was very easy to gravitate towards it. It was easy to read and something like that, right? And then I realized, okay, that person in the beginning, they knocked it down, but then it gave a lot more value. It had a lag time to stick. And as long as I know what I'm doing, I don't have to listen to others. And then no, everyone will not be happy with me. And I've like learned to live with that. People will not like me. So I've like learned that people will not like me, and that's okay. Like
Yeah,
even
I
when I go to
think
an interview or anything.
the important thing with social
Yeah.
media is you're not going to serve every member of every audience. And that's why one of the things that I say is like, be clear on who you want to target, and stick to that. Because again, to your point, you can't please everyone. So I appreciate you sharing that example, Faisal. Sandra, are there other
Thank you.
questions? I want to make sure we cover everybody's. I think there's a few other ones in the chat I want to make sure we get to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Black put in a great question. This is a good opportunity for you to unmute, or I'm happy to read it for you. All right, I'll go ahead and read the question. How do you two measure success? Specifically, which metrics, milestones are you looking for or setting?
This is hard. And again, with the reminder that this is totally in your control when it comes to personal branding and content and showing up. For me personally, I think that if you maybe would have asked me this a year ago, I probably would have said something different. Maybe I would have said something like followers or metrics. Right now, I'm more interested in like deep partnerships, collaborations, opportunities to facilitate conversations, be part of webinars, presentations, conferences. That's more what I'm interested in. And so, that to me, if I'm booking some of those or getting into some of those opportunities, that's successful. I'm not as interested right now in blowing up to 100,000 followers or having a bunch of people flock to my profile. That's all well and great, but it's not necessarily success to me at this point in time. And so that's all to say, I think it evolves. I think that it's something that's totally personal, something that might underscore success for me always is and are people seeing me for the value that I bring? Am I showing up as my most authentic self? If I'm not in the room, how are people describing me? And is it those things that I want people to be saying about me? Are they always positive? Is it Angie's a really great thought enhancer in this space? She contributes in these ways. She adds this unique lens to Gen Z, right? She's talking about intergenerational work as well, not just early career, right? That's success. And as long as I'm continually showing up in that way consistently, that to me is successful.
Yeah, and I think it ties to what we sort of said at the beginning, right? It's like everyone's goal with social media is going to be a bit different. So for Ange and for your business, it makes sense that like that is how you were defining success. I think one of the things that I have been using to define success, or one of the ways that I'm using LinkedIn is actually to experiment with different types of content. Like part of when I create my content calendar for the following week is I have like certain themes. If you like pay attention, like you'll notice like some kind of patterns to what I'd like to post about. And what I'm trying to do is understand like what my target audience finds most helpful, because then that will bleed into the way that I design my product. It'll bleed into the way that I think about my email newsletter. It'll go into how I think about like content for my clients. Like it's a much more kind of expansive thing that I'm thinking about when it comes to what I'm looking at LinkedIn. I definitely pay attention to also comments. Like I think where I can generate conversation, or people were like, I feel really like seen in this post, or this like really resonates with me. Like that's the other like feeling I really try and emote, or I want people to feel when they read my content, is like, ooh, this like really struck a chord with me. Because I think, again, particularly for my audience, which is so much job seekers, it's so lonely looking for a job, right? And it's like such a you despair. There's a lot of despair involved in the process, and I think a lot of people don't feel seen. And because like Ange and I both understand this about job seekers, and we both know that that is what our audience is feeling, I think it's really important that we create content from that emotional place too. So I like to see that it's just doing what I hope it's doing. And then of course, like, you know, Sandra and I do track like followers and likes and comments and engagement and all of those things. But I would say beyond the obvious metrics that LinkedIn provides, like I put it through the context of like, what was my larger goal for this platform? And is it achieving that? And I think that's super important to consider.
Something that I would also love to add, as I am more of a baby LinkedIn content creator, I was inspired by both Ange and Mariam, is that my main metric that I'm tracking is trust. I know that there's a lot of advertising fatigue right now, where there's so many different content creators that will kind of slip in something that they're promoting or selling. And personally, as a consumer of content and also products, I love to at least have transparency about it. And so as I'm writing my posts on LinkedIn, for me, I'm just trying to think, can I have a conversation with someone in real life, like scheduling a video call from this post? For me, that's the win. It's making these more direct personal connections. And so I kind of use my LinkedIn as my feelers and trying to see which people I am attracting, and then just listening and asking them questions. So there is so much value with starting and knowing that there's not that many people looking at you. I know Ange, Mariam, you guys have bigger audiences, but for me, I could go crazy and no one would really see it. Maybe I would get unwanted attention. However, that's just something I try to lean in, is just being a beginner and trying to be big, because at the end of the day, the consequences are really small. Oh, right. I know, Faisal, you have another question, but I just want to give everyone else a chance to ask. I know, Carrie, not to call on you, but yesterday you had a lot of great questions, so I wanted to give you some space here if you wanted to ask anything. I promise we do not bite, so. Okay, awesome. I know, Faisal, you have another question. Go ahead if you want to ask it.
I can ask it straight. I can read it. So, I asked, what are each of your biggest competitive advantages? I said it so I could like emulate, like copy because then I can adopt it and then I can do it in my way, right? So I can grow.
I don't know if I've thought about myself in this way or the things that I share. I would hope that competitively I offer sort of a lens on, I talk about early career, I talk about early career development, talk about Gen Z, I talk about the world of work. And I hope that I, via a Gen Z voice, a younger voice in the world of work, can offer a different perspective on intergenerational work, because I think there are often pretty distinct viewpoints of what it's like to work with older adults from Gen Z and how older adults might feel about working with Gen Z in return, right? And I always try to humanize that conversation in any room that I go into to have that discussion. I remind folks we all have bias. We all have probably had an experience with a bad manager. We've probably had an instance where we felt like we had to teach up or we felt like someone was talking down to us. Those things are all normal. What makes an intergenerational workplace really thrive is that mutual understanding, respect, and any effort that we're putting in to effectively communicate and thus collaborate. So I think that that is my competitive edge in that sense of when I do talk about the things that I talk about, that topic in particular, I'm offering my specific perspective as a younger professional in the world of work, thinking about intergenerational work, because there aren't a lot of younger creators who are talking about working with folks across the work span, the career span. So I hope that that sets me apart. And just always, like, what's most important to me is the value I bring, the trust that I have. And I'm all about amplifying folks who are doing the same thing that I'm doing. I don't see that as like severe competition. Like, I want to support Sandra, I want to support Mariam, I want to support Jade, anybody who's sharing things like I'm sharing. Let's lift the heck out of them. Like, let me help share what they're doing and promote what they're doing. So yeah, competition, I try not to see it too much, but at least in like the content that I speak about in that particular topic around early career professionals and intergenerational work, I think that the lens that I provide is a unique one, and I hope it's an impactful one for the audiences that I serve.
Yeah, I think that the first step that you can kind of take on this is understand like who is a voice already in this space. So one of the things that I had sort of noticed and also heard from people who are Gen Z job seekers is there, one, aren't that many people talking about like the early career job search experience, like Ange, Jade, me, there's like maybe like 12 of us that I see regularly on my feed, if I'm being so real. There aren't a lot of people who are talking specifically about that experience. And Ange has the advantage. I'm a young millennial. I'm not even Gen Z, right? Like, and I'm very transparent about that. But I think that one thing that I did notice is that people were feeling really lost. And like, particularly through the pandemic, when it came to understanding how the job search process worked, how do I navigate my first day on the job? Like, there was a huge knowledge gap that was just like growing and growing and growing. So for me, it was, because I'm not Gen Z, I can't offer the lived Gen Z experience like Ange can. That is like where Ange has so much of a lived experience advantage. What I can do is like, okay, my thing that is unique is that I coached hundreds of students through their first jobs and internships through the pandemic and beyond. So I have like a way that I can bring my millennial voice and advocate for the students that I have worked with and try and bridge that gap between like employers and candidates because I've been on both sides. So that's where like I feel that I found my niche. And so I think just like being really, really deliberate with like what's out there, where can I add, and what is like something that I can bring value to, and like what's going to really strike a chord with the people that I'm talking to. And again, not just like in the knowledge piece, but I also think the emotional piece. Like I think something you'll find if you go follow all of these voices that we've just talked about today, or even like look at Ange, Sandra, and I, the way that we all even like speak and our language and the graphics we use and all of that are really distinctly different. Like our personalities are all coming through. So even that I think can help just carve out a niche for yourself in the market. So I'll say that. And then Michael, I see that you dropped a question. How can you best expand your personal brand? Oh, that is a That's a big question. Ange, do you want to take a first swing at it?
Yes. So when it comes to expanding your personal brand, right? And I take expand to mean just bringing more into it, like sharing more, being more present. I hope that's what you mean. If it's not, please correct me. When I think about that, I would first take a moment to self-reflect and do a little bit of thinking about why do I want to be sharing? What are those things that I want to share about? And when I see people kind of get this urge to like be more present, share a little bit more, it can come in a burst and then it tapers. So I'd think about how you can make it sustainable. Just think about maintenance with it. I sometimes get those bursts of like, I have 4 TikTok ideas that I want to put out there in succession. And then my brain's kind of dried up for a couple days and I don't share as much, or there's not as much for me to put out there. And so just think about maintenance and how you can grow and expand in a way that's sustainable for you and in a way that makes sense. I'd also think about, tapping into someone who's maybe more in your niche, in your specific area, just to throw some ideas off of them. Use your network for what it's there for. Ask around, shop around, get some feedback on those things that you want to be sharing. If it is content driven on LinkedIn, try out a post, see how it does. If you liked the format and it did well, it performed well, that's feedback for you to maybe try that format again. If it was a format that, even if it did well, but you really disliked the process of engaging in it and making it, maybe it becomes less part of your expansion, right? Of your consistency and showing up. Maybe you pivot a little bit. So I'd say like try things out. Don't be afraid to reframe, adapt, reflect, keep it fluid, keep it open, and be kind to yourself in the process. I think when we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to expand, to do more, it can get a little bit overwhelming. So that's why I emphasize the maintenance and the sustainability piece of it all.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other two things that you could do when you're thinking about how do I grow my reach, how do I, expand my audience? I agree that you should have like the conversation with yourself, with all of us, have a conversation with yourself first of like, what's my goal? What's my intention? But two things that I've also found, and this takes a lot of energy. So again, you want to be like, am I ready to like commit this work? One is partnering on content, right? So like, what I have found is if you can work collaboratively with people who are like, again, talking about similar things, passionate about similar issues, and you elevate their work and they help elevate your work, like you can build some of those partnerships with people to help grow. That's something that might happen a little bit later, may not happen immediately, but keeping an eye out for who you could align yourself with is really, I find, to be super helpful. Because also with LinkedIn, everyone's trying to promote their own content. So even something as simple as resharing content from people that you admire and adding your own, like, hey, I just read this thing from Ange, it was so helpful. Like, here's something that this is the way I've applied it to my life. Like, it can even be that you don't have to reach out to somebody directly, be like, let's collab. But like elevating other people's work too and engaging with it is really helpful. The other thing you can do is thinking about like what is top of mind, what is kind of hot on the market right now. Tariffs, the economy. This is a big thing that on job seekers' mind. So like I did a post on it and it did really well because this is what people are thinking about. So keeping your pulse on stuff like that, I think is really, really powerful. So if you're trying to think about how to get more engagement with your content, like again, take some effort, but that one also I've found always makes a difference. So, oh my gosh, 7:59. Sandra, I'll hand it to you. Oh, yeah.
We're at time. Thank you everyone for your questions. I know we had some questions about networking, so I'm just going to drop in the chat a final workshop Mariam and I are hosting called Networking 101, How to Pass the Vibe Check. And I love to do a vibe check at the end of these panels and workshops, so can you please give a thumbs up if this was helpful to you in any way? I'm going to remove the spotlight so I can see everyone. Yay! Awesome. And as one takeaway, I'm really curious to know what is one thing that you're going to take away from this. Please drop it in the chat. This helps solidify your learning as well. Success is measured on our own terms. Love that. How to create my competitive advantages. Okay, awesome. So, quick housekeeping. I'll be sending out an email with the recording and resources by Friday. Let me just go ahead and stop it.